Under Grand Prince Dmitri, Moscow had grown rich and allied itself with old adversaries. Together, the Rus allies were ready to challenge the dominance of the Mongols and stopped paying them tribute. On the banks of the River Don, Dmitri would stake his life on being the first Rus leader to defeat the Horde in battle. Arriving at Kulikovo, Prince Dmitri and his army would rendezvous with allied forces from all principalities loyal to Moscow. Together, they would challenge more than a century of Mongol dominance. Before the battle, Dmitri would recruit soldiers from nearby villages. He would also ride to his allies, who were awaiting their battle orders.
Воини, наказы слушайте.
Живу службы ради!
Оружие, все место доброе. Прихожу на место Ина. Труждаюсь хлеба ради.
The villagers pledged all the soldiers they could spare, strengthening Dmitri's position against the Horde.
Готов, исполнено будет. Напрямик! Ворог ожидает! Посмотрите оружие! Наступаем!
Ожидаю наказа. Куда направлять? Сделано будет!
Время действовать! Приготовляйтесь, идем! Долг есть время. Оружие готовите! Наступаем!
Ворози на подошинаны!
Оружие готовите! Наступаем! Выступайте доблестно, воины! Восстанете, воины! Служите рад, ясно. Поведу вы. Живу службы ради.
The Rus discovered a new settlement, which pledged its soldiers to Moscow's cause.
Приготовляйтесь, воины! Посмотрите оружие! Наступаем! Какой наказ есть? Приготовляйтесь, воины!
Давно есть. С ума простая.
Долг несть бремя! Свиньи стреляют в нас! Сейчас. Служите, ратья!
Dmitri delivered the battle orders to his allies. They would take up position on the Smolka river fords and ready themselves for the enemy's arrival. With a loyal army assembled, Dmitri began the march north to meet the enemy in battle.
Силатницы готовы суть! Апрель! Ворог ожидает! Приготовляйтесь, а наказы исполняйте.
Dmitri would oversee the battle with his own detachment of fighters, moving to support any ford crossing that seemed at risk of being overwhelmed. As Mongol war drums sounded through the fog, Dmitri and his men steeled themselves for the arrival of the horde.
Противный близ стоит!
Уже наступает!
Ворог нападает!
Ратницы, на коней садитесь! Исполнена воля! Служите, ратьяс!
The Rus were emboldened by this first small victory and stood firm on the Smolka River, ready for the enemy's next attack.
Держать крепость во что бы то ни стало!
Civilians from the province, although unable to fight, vowed to construct defences for Dmitri should he need to fall back from the northern fords.
Оружие готовите! Наступаем! Живу служба ради! Рад служить.
Dmitri's allied villagers had finished constructing a line of defences, which Dmitri could choose to fall back to if he lost the fords.
иду службы ради. Служите рад, если... Да, повинуюсь. Каков приказ? Хорошо. Идти надо на поскору. Таков наказ есть. Сейчас. Время.
Dmitri and his Rus allies held the fords and eliminated the Mongol vanguard. While the enemy regrouped after the initial skirmish, the prince ordered the Rus to fall back to the hilltop defenses behind them. As they retreated, nearby Rus provinces mustered additional forces to Dmitri's side.
Готовы будете, воины! Исполнено будет! Готов, если в силу. Наказ. Выступать и надо. Время действовать. Посмотрите оружие, наступаем! Апрель! Служите рад, оружие готовите! Наступаем! Смотрите, приготовляйтесь! Оружие готовите! Наступаем! Обрез! Ворог ожидает! Посмотрите оружие! Наступаем!
In planning to face the horde, Dmitri had called upon a cavalry detachment to stage an ambush. He received word that his reinforcements had begun to arrive and bided his time for the right moment to call them to battle.
Двигайтесь надобно! Братья, двигайтесь надобно! Готовы будете, воины! Исполнено будет!
With the terror of the horde on their doorstep, Rus villagers once again rushed to construct more defenses, this time on the banks of the Don River. The two great armies clashed in the fog, but Dmitri's men stood firm.
Оружие готовите! Наступаем! Долг несть бремя. Восстанете, воине! Поведу вы. Выступайте доблестно, воине! Оружие готовите! Наступаем!
Противный! Лист стоит!
Небеса защитят! Коней садитесь! Приготовляйтесь! Идите! Посмотрите оружие! Наступайте! Победи! Служба ради! Исполнено будет! Служите, рад ясен! Апрель! Вон ожидает! Долг несть бремя. Выступайте доблестно, воине! Восстанете, воине!
In desperation, Dmitri called in the cavalry force, even though they were not yet at full strength.
Послушание есть добродетель. Васницы с ними готовятся. Оружие готовите. Васницы на Приготовляйтесь, идите. Победа есть! Оружие на плече нам. Ему служба ради.
The Mongol numbers dwindled as the Rus struck down their ranks. Seeking an even stronger position, Dmitri ordered his forces to fall back to the Don River, where his allies had constructed new defenses.
Приготовляйтесь, воине!
As the Rus fell back, a fresh detachment of reinforcements joined the fight.
Время действовать! Оружие готовите! Наступаем! Время действовать! Живу службы ради! Исполнено будет! Сей час! Служите, рад ясен! Приготовляйтесь, воине! Исполнено будет!
Вижу ворога!
Небеса! войне. Долг есть время.
Капитан ворога!
With their backs to the River Don, the Rus held their ground in a last stand against their ferocious enemy.
Приготовляйтесь, а наказы исполняйте. Служите, раб, если. Исполнено будет!
Противник! Ворог поражает!
In the last gasps of the desperate battle, the Rus would not back down. It would be victory or death.
Долг есть бремя. Служите, раб, если. Посмотрите оружие! Наступаем! Долг есть бремя!
For the first time in over 100 years of subjugation, the armies of the Rus defeated the Mongols in battle. For 3 days and nights, Prince Dmitri buried the fallen in the fields of Kulikovo. He became known as Donskoy, the victor at the River Don. The might of medieval Moscow was powered by strong arms and an unbreakable fighting spirit.
Fighting with a sword and shield, eye to eye in a gritty and brutal contest, was the European way. Swords in Moscow developed along the same lines as they did in Western Europe. This is a typical sword of around 1400. It's got a broad, double-edged blade, a simple crossguard, and this heavy pommel counterbalances the blade.
They were so well balanced that these powerful medieval swords were capable of being wielded with great speed and fluidity.
By the 14th century, improvements in the manufacture of iron made it possible to fashion swords with longer blades. And swords like this, requiring two hands to wield, became more and more common on the battlefield.
They were called long swords, and they were used with sophisticated martial techniques.
It does have incredible and terrifying power.
But there was another influence on Moscow. Moscow traded with the East, and Moscow fought with the East. And it was from the East that Moscow adopted the saber, with its distinctively curved blade. The curve on a saber blade gives a natural slice to the cut, so cutting deeper for less effort. These exceptionally light swords were first and foremost a horseman's weapon.
As a single-strike weapon, using the speed of the horse for impact, it was one cut onto the next.
But cutting wasn't their only use.
Even with a curved blade, you can still deliver an effective thrust.
However, for all their cavalry dash, the old ways of standing firm remained part of the Muscovy way, forging a military culture that was a unique blend of West and East.